and welcome to the A Little Spoon Kitchen. Today we are going to be doing some meatballs, and we're going to be doing tomato sauce. Not the spaghetti. If you feel like making that on your own, you are welcome to. That may be a recipe further down the road. But today we are focusing specifically on the sauce and on the meatballs. Now I know there are a lot of meatball recipes out there, especially in the last 2 years. I feel like people have been really experimenting and having a lot of fun. And I may or may not talk. I probably will talk. I like to talk. I will probably talk about some of the other things that you can do to meatballs if you decide that you want to add even more variety or change it up to your tastes as we kind of progress through this recipe. But I like to use a panade. When I make my meatballs, I don't use breadcrumbs. I use soft, fresh bread that is mixed with milk and egg and some cheese. I use Parmesan cheese and some parsley and stuff like that, and some other spices and herbs. And I will mix that in with the meat, with the ground beef and ground pork, so that they retain their moisture and they stay soft. Breadcrumbs, a lot of the times, if you're not careful, can really dry out a meatball if it's not cooking in sauce for a really, really long time. And we will also talk about the difference between cooking in sauce for a really long time or cooking the sauce for a really long time and then just making the meatballs and kind of tossing them in for a little bit, and kind of what the difference is there. Because there really is, I honestly feel like there is no right way to really do this, especially because meatballs are such an Italian American tradition that every family has their own way of doing it. So this is mine. This is kind of what I've come up with. It's what we enjoy at home with my family. And we're going to start with the sauce. I typically like to start this sauce several hours before I start the meatballs so that the sauce can really concentrate and develop a lot more flavor. But for the sake of a video on YouTube, we're going to go ahead. We're just going to start it now, and it'll probably be about cooking for maybe an hour instead of something like 3. By the time we're adding our meatballs into it, maybe an hour and a half before we're adding the meatballs into it. So it'll be a little bit on the weaker side, but you are absolutely welcome. You're absolutely welcome to make the sauce and then make the meatballs and put the meatballs in the refrigerator or freeze them. Keep cooking the sauce and then return the meatballs to the sauce to reheat when it comes time for you to actually eat your dinner or whatever that looks like. For those of you who are joining me from my YouTube channel, and this is a video that you've clicked on and it's not a live, this was previously a live. I have people with me in a chat. They will be asking me questions. I will be talking to them. So you're going to see me kind of glancing over here and talking to people. I have several people that are cooking along with me today during this live. So I'll be checking in with them and answering any questions that they might have. You will get a little bit of that, but it's kind of nice because sometimes they'll ask me questions that I wouldn't think to answer, and just the ramblings that I go through on tips and tricks and things that I think are helpful as I'm cooking. So hopefully there'll be something in there, a question that you might have asked or be curious about, and somebody asked it as well, and I've answered it, and you're taken care of. Otherwise, if you do have a question about this video, you can go ahead and just type in a question in the comment section after the fact, and I'm kind of casually checking and making sure that if anybody does have one that I can go and respond, and I'll respond there. If you are looking for, I guess we'll plug at the beginning and the end. Why not? If you're looking for more recipes that are similar or dissimilar to this one, but also I think very good, I do have a website. It's alittlespoon.com, and I also have an Instagram, and that's at @a_little_spoon. I'm posting stuff kind of all the time. I'll post lots of pictures and I'll post recipes. And then, as is the way that social media goes, stories are mostly for just what's going on with me, what's going on in my life. If you go to the website, you can also sign up to get my newsletter. I do not send the daily, weekly, hey, new recipe, any of that kind of stuff. You get a monthly newsletter that's just telling you what I'm going to be doing throughout the month with all the links that you need so that you can use it in a kind of utilitarian way. And just if you can't remember where you need to go or what's going on, you can refer back to the email and click through to anything that you would like to watch. We do several different things throughout the month, so it's kind of always good to have that on handy. And it also has like replays from previous months and recipes from previous months, and then what you should look forward to for the upcoming month. So it's kind of just like the download of all the things that are going on during the month and happened previously. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. There probably is, but let's get started. So the first thing that we want to do for our tomato sauce is we're actually going to, let me bring all of my ingredients over here. We're actually going to blend up some whole peeled tomatoes and some onion in a blender. Okay. Part of the reason why also, I know I said like develop flavor when I was talking about how long I like to cook the tomato sauce. Part of it also is that when you're blending like essentially uncooked tomatoes and onion together, it can be really, really acidic. And that onion doesn't kind of cook down, the tomato doesn't cook down and get sweet until it's been cooking for a while. And so I will say this right now, everything will go in. Do not taste it for at least 30 minutes or you're going to be like, oh my God, this is not it. It's going to be really acidic, but it mellows out as it cooks and it will get better and better and better as it goes. So just, keep that in your head. You're welcome to taste. It's always a good idea to taste as you go, but just know that the acerbic nature of those ingredients will mellow as they cook and not like, it's not immediately going to be like the best tomato sauce. Does anybody have any questions as we kind of get going? Anybody? Okay, I think we are caught up. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna open up 2 cans of whole peeled tomatoes. And then what I'm going to do, if you go to this recipe on the website, alittlespoon.com, we already kind of discussed that. If you go to the website, you'll see in the recipe, the instructions section has like 2 different variations on like how to do this for your tomato sauce. I prefer variation 2. You do not have to do that. Number 1 is essentially opening these cans, putting both of them in here along with your onion and blending everything together into like a super fine puree, like tomato sauce consistency. Number 2 is to do the juice from these cans and the onion, blend that up, and then separately kind of hand crush the whole peeled tomatoes. I prefer that. I think it gives it a more rustic texture, and I like that with the tomato sauce. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. Also, it's extra work, so I'm kind of going to be leaning into like all of the extras today, so that I'm covering all of the things that just give like have extra technique or extra time, so that if you do plan to do the longer version, it's kind of there for you. Okay, so we're going to open these up. I've got 2 28-ounce cans. That's 796 milliliters. This is my can opener. For anybody that's wondering, this is a left-handed can opener. I know chat's going to be asking questions about this one. Huh? Okay. You have this can opener? I love this can opener. Oh, did you got it after I mentioned it? And you like it? I love this can opener. It's just so much easier. And it doesn't, it cuts so that there's no like hard edges, no sharp edges, which I really like. Okay, so we're gonna this, by the way, you will be touching food today. So the way that people say like touch grass, touch food. It's okay. Just make sure your hands are clean. and then you'll be fine. Okay. So I'm gonna put my whole tomatoes in here. I'm gonna try to get more sauce into this blender so that the onions have something to blend, something liquid to blend in. Left-handed? Now you're gonna tell you play games with inverted controls. I do. I do. But I feel like that's a female thing. I feel like a lot of the women that I've met, especially ones who are like, I don't know how to. Okay, my husband. Sorry for those of you who are here and you just want to cook. My husband streams video games for his job, and we will sometimes play together. And let me wash my hands. I play inverted on the controls, but I feel like a lot of the time, for people who are like, I can never, for honestly anybody, but I hear it more with women than anybody else. If they're like, I get in there and then all I'm doing is spinning and I can't see where I'm going and I can't, it just feels like I don't know what I'm doing and then I keep getting shot and I don't get my bearings straight. You probably are set to default and you should be playing inverted. That's just my opinion. Yeah, so essentially, it kind of like, I don't know if you can see, they kind of just like come together and then you use this to spin around and then there's this little like beak situation here that you kind of just will pick the can up, the top of the can. And I love it. But yeah, it's Rikon Kun. I'm pretty sure they stopped making it. So if you're going to find it, you're going to have to find it on like eBay or something like that. But something else about why I like to do the tomato sauce this way is there are like right up where, oh gosh, you ready? Right where the calyx is on the tomato plants. So right where like the green top meets the actual tomato fruit, or meets the actual fruit, there's like a hard section that's like super fibrous. And if you're gonna blend everything down, that's really great. Because you're kind of taking care of it. But I like to do this by hand because I like to get rid of it like all the way. Like I don't want to have any of it. So my hands are still kind of messy. Let me see if I can, that way you can see this better. So essentially, let's see if I can find, yeah. Okay, so I don't know if we've got, are we in? Ugh. Which way am I going? This way. Dang it. Don't have space. Okay, so this is the bottom. It's like really soft. You can see right here, all of these like really fibrous, like all these fibers kind of run up to the center here. So this is where the stem came in, right? And that's like really tough on tomatoes. And so what I like to do is I like to kind of pull that out so that we don't keep it. And then I'll stick that, like I'll toss that. But you can kind of pinch and like pull that out. So like that whole section is like really fibrous and it's not fun to eat that, at least in my opinion. Now, if you're blending it, if you're putting it in like a high power blender or something like that, it's not a big deal. But I like to completely get rid of that and then hand crush everything that's left over. If you want to use crushed tomatoes, you can do that as well. Like if you want to buy like a can of like just crushed tomatoes, that is fine. This is going to have a better flavor just because it's a whole tomato. But you can do that if you want to like cut that corner and save that time. So like again, here's this like really fibrous kind of section. I'm just kind of pinching and taking off the top. That's the bottom, that's the top. And you can see exactly where that stem was. I'm gonna move this over because you can't see what I'm doing. There. Now it's centered. Got some skin. We've got some peel in here. Crushed tomatoes in a can work well enough for me, like 95% of the time. Yeah, like the difference is minimal. If you want to do that, you absolutely can. This is me just being extra. Okay, there's the top, bottom's down there. Same thing. I'm just going to give it a little pinch. Take all this fibrous matter out. So right now I'm just trying to make sure that I am keeping everything off to like one side so that I don't miss any of them. If I do, it's not the end of the world, but I'm trying not to. And you'll notice that this is getting like really liquidy because I'm kind of squeezing. You know how like when you cut a tomato around the seeds, there's like all of the like extra liquid, right? So you have like you have like the peel and some of the flesh, and then you have that like the juice and the seeds. I'm basically like squeezing that section and it's coming in the bowl. I'll add it to the blender before I do the onions. It's probably not necessary at this point. There's plenty of liquid in that blender, but we can do that. Welcome, Raiders. We've had a bunch of people join on the Twitch version of this live. Hi. Welcome in. If you have any questions about food, we are making we're making meatballs and tomato sauce. Almost done. It do be meatball season. It's getting there. Definitely getting there. Okay. I think I've gotten, oh, 2 more. I think I've gotten all of them. Oh, keep finding random ones. Okay. So now we're going to do the thing. I'm not going to add this liquid in. There's plenty of liquid in there for the minimal amount of onion that's going in this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to stick my hands in this and I'm just going to scritch it. Crunch. And squeeze it. Just make sure that you're squeezing with your hand underneath the liquid so that you don't break the surface tension and like send tomato juice everywhere in your kitchen. Go slow. Take your time. Get messy. But not too messy. I'm not going to repeat that, Jones. Get messy, make mistakes? Yeah. Okay. So I think this is about where I want it. You'll see like it's pretty rustic. I've got some large pieces, but we've got like a serious saucy situation going on here. And this will continue to break down as it cooks as well. But this is what I like. You could, like I said, pour all of this into that blender right from the can. You don't have to take the tops off. If it's going in the blender, it's getting pulverized and that all of the fibrous stuff that we kind of took off will be gone. But because I'm not blending it, I wanted to take care of that. And you could pour all that into the blender. Clean up just a little bit. Made a bit of got some splashes. Not too bad. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is we're going to do about a quarter of an onion. I'm using I guess this is a white onion. Let me get a yellow onion or a sweet onion. I do have that. Move this stuff up too. I have some more space. Okay, so we're gonna use about a quarter of an onion. It's about 65 grams. So I'm going to also weigh that just for consistency's sake. You're gonna take the bottom, which is not the root. The root is what I consider the top. Take the bottom off so you have a flat surface to cut on, and then you can just kind of cut straight down. I guess if you wanted to, you could cut it in a quarter. But we're gonna do this and see how much we have. You are going to be using more onion later on in the meatballs, so like it's okay. If it's not perfect or something like that, like you'll have a chance to use the rest. So let's see what we have here. Ooh. What do you know? That's good. 66 grams. We'll be good with that. Okay, so essentially I'm just gonna kind of do like just some really big pieces, and I'm just gonna toss that in. And that's gonna get blended. I apologize for the noise in advance. Actually, let's, I can turn it off. I can turn this off and just blend. It's only gonna take like 30 seconds. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and we're done. That was way louder because the high switch had been left on, so it went as fast as it possibly could. That's okay though, it worked. Okay, so I'm going to just got up in the cap. I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna leave that to rest a little bit. We're gonna start the base of the sauce now that we've done this. And I'm also going to cover this onion with a wet paper towel. So something about onions, essentially you're releasing, I think it's like sulfur. There you go. Like a chemical compound that's similar to like sulfur. Every time that you crush through the cellular structure of an onion. And so if you want to combat that, wear contacts. Best way to cut onions without crying is to wear contacts or goggles if you're like really like, I can't do this. You can stand near a fan. So like if you put your like a vent on and you're cutting that way, all of the, what is the word that I'm thinking of? Fumes. All of the fumes kind of get sucked away and not into your eyes. The other thing that you can do once you're done, like as quickly as you can when you're done chopping, is get a wet paper towel, wipe down your surface, wipe down your knife, and then cover. If you have like diced onions that you're not using yet, cover with a wet cloth or cover your onion with a wet cloth, and it'll keep all of those fumes from kind of continuing to be in your area, and it'll keep it away from your eyes. So yeah, protect yourself because onions are not fun when they make you cry like that. Okay, so we've got that. Now we're gonna start doing what I like to call the umami bomb. So in a lot of the savory recipes that I have on my website, you'll notice that I have some kind of combination of soy sauce or tamari, miso paste, Marmite, tomato paste. Let's see, sometimes I'll use like mushroom, like a mushroom powder. and several other ingredients. Anchovies are in this one. Several other ingredients that add umami or savoriness to a dish. And essentially what I tend to do is I tend to make just like a paste of it. And then I will toast spices and oil and then add that paste in, cook that paste, and then start adding in all of the things that are gonna like deglaze and then be like the sauce. That's typically the order of things when you're making like a sauce, a soup, a stew, or something like that, is you will toast off your spices, get them all fully incorporated into whatever oil is in there. That way they're going to actually like meld into your sauce better than like if you just toss them in at the end. So they'll get like really fragrant, they'll get really into that oil, and then that will get absorbed and kind of mixed around in everything, right? Because it's kind of like a liquid-like, the viscosity of liquid. And then your aromatics go in, and then any kind of sauce, liquid, whatever is going to get on top of that. So that is, yes, that is the order. If you are like, okay, and I say this with all the love in my heart, if you don't like anchovies, there are other things that you can add. I do not just substitute anchovies with Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce, the reason it tastes the way it does is because of anchovies. So you've done nothing if you substitute by using that, because they are the same. There's just less. So yay, the more we know. But also you can do like tamari or soy sauce. If you still want to get a little bit of that umami, you can kind of substitute it. It's not going to be the same. You can add miso paste. Because this is tomato sauce, you can do either a red miso paste or a white miso paste. It's really up to you. White is going to be a little bit of a lighter flavor. Red is going to be a deeper umami flavor. I would probably use red if I were going to be doing this, especially because we have meatballs. It's not like if it were, say, a seafood dish, like if you were doing like a fra diavolo or something like that, and you have tomato sauce, but it's got seafood in it, maybe the white miso paste for that. Because we have beef, I would probably do the red miso paste just because of the way that they would go well together. So if you're looking to be like no anchovies, those are options you can do. You can also add extra Parmesan, throw a Parmesan rind in or something like that. That has a lot of umami in it. Yeah, options. There are options. Hey, Lindsay, how are you doing? Are you with me? Anyone who's cooking with me, how are we doing? Yes, a sharp knife, that is also, that is a good point. For the onions, where I was saying like protect just essentially with the fumes, the sharper your knife is, the less crushing you're doing to the cellular structure of the onion and more kind of like slicing, so you're just doing less damage, which means less fumes if the sharper that your knife is. So that's also very important. Very, very good point. I'm with you. Okay, cool. We're all good? We're good? Okay. Okay. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to start making this, like I said, the umami, or my umami paste here. And we're going to get anchovies, which I know are here. There they are. Okay, we need 1 anchovy. And I need a knife, or a fork. Let's see if we can snag one out of here. Oop. Please. We got 2. Okay. You go back in. I did version 1. Okay, cool. Oh, cool. Nice. You messed around with the whole tomatoes just to look at that. Oh, I love that. Okay, so for the anchovy, you're gonna want to turn this into a paste, which basically just means you're gonna mash it with the back of a fork and just kind of keep pushing it into the tines until it starts to fall apart. kind of turn a little bit so you can see that better. Essentially, I'm just kind of overlapping it over itself and pushing it through. Kind of the same way the same thing you would do with like garlic. You could, I guess technically you could do this with like a knife. I just find that the fork is just faster. And we're breaking this down because we want this to completely dissolve in the sauce. If you just toss like a whole anchovy in, you will find it later. Nobody wants that. I mean, some people might want that, but I don't want that today. Can dried anchovies be used? You know, I don't see why not. I don't see why not. It just have to, yeah, because it's, I mean, it's the same flavor. I don't know if there's like a huge flavoral difference, but texturally, if you want it to fall apart and like dissolve, there's really no difference because the texture is not the important part of this. The flavor is. Okay, so anchovy is done. Okay, we're going to move on to some tomato paste. Okay, we're going to use 2 tablespoons, 30 milliliters by volume. Do I have grams in here? That can't be right. It's 30 milliliters by volume, but I'll give you the grams live so that you have them. Okay, you're going to hit about 26 grams. You do both. Yeah, 27 grams. Lid. The texture of anchovies freak me out. I'm gonna have to sub with which. Does it freak you out while you're actually like making the paste? Like, is it like I don't want to touch them, or is it like a texture when I'm eating it? Because you're not going to know that it's even there when it comes time to eating it. So keep that in mind. Okay, we're gonna do a half a teaspoon of Marmite, which is about 4 grams. I get this in the international aisle in my local grocery store. You can buy it on Amazon if you so choose. That is an absolute okay. I honestly just gonna scoop stuff out with my finger. Whatever, it's fine. If you really want a way to get, especially like Marmite is like sticky. But if you want a way to make sure that you're getting like all of these out, you can spray these with like cooking spray and then it will slide itself out when you go to dump it. I do that a lot with like things like honey and any other thing that like will actually drip, kind of like drip out, but like slowly because it's viscous. Can I repeat the name of that? Marmite. It's yeast extract. This is like what's left over. It's used as a spread for like toast in the UK. I really like to use it for savory dishes. The yeast extract is like huge when it comes to umami, and it gives it like a meaty, bready flavor, or like adds like that kind of like layer, that depth with just one ingredient. And it's pretty powerful stuff. So like you'll notice like we're making, you know, like a nice amount of sauce, and I've only got like a half a teaspoon. There's like 4 grams. This thing how many grams is this? 250 grams. Like it's something that I kind of just keep as a pantry staple. It's always there. I do actually go through these. I think I'm down at the bottom on this guy, and I have another one in the pantry. So like they do get used in my house. At literally any time I'm making a soup or a stew, some of that goes into it. And you will see that if you do go to other recipes on my website, like you won't be buying this in vain, I promise. If you're buying it for like one recipe, if you do any other recipes on the site, you will see this like almost any time something is supposed to be savory, you will see this in the recipe. It sounds like a cross between marmalade and Vegemite. I think it's supposed to be similar to Vegemite. It is slightly different, but they are like relatives to each other. Does this qualify as Sunday sauce? I think so. Right? Can I ask what Marmite tastes like? It tastes just like it's salty. I don't know. For me, it's good. It's kind of like if miso paste went a little further, had a little bit of a like yeast, like bread yeast, and then it's salty. So just like a miso paste. I don't know how helpful that is, but that's what it's giving to me. I don't know if that's helpful. Okay. Small bowl for these next steps is okay. Yes. Yes, I'm using a small bowl because we're making this paste and there's not a ton to it. So I'm using a small bowl so that I can kind of mix. It's got to be like I have these guys, these little dip bowls. This would fit everything. This would be pretty close to fitting everything. But once you go to mix it, it'll kind of be everywhere. So I use something that's like slightly bigger than what I need, so that when I'm mixing, I'm like not mixing things outside of the bowl and like pushing them out. Yeah, no problem. Anytime. Yeah, a small bowl is good. Okay, so we got our Marmite. We're gonna add some garlic. So I am actually allergic to garlic. So I make roasted garlic because if I cook it, the allergy is like not an allergy anymore. But I can't do raw garlic. If you want to do raw garlic, you can do raw garlic. It is not a big deal. Go for it. It will cook down in the sauce and it won't matter. But I do have roasted garlic. I think the recipe calls for roasted garlic, but you can use like cloves of garlic and it not be a big deal. Let me point this out too. This is supposed to be 4 cloves of garlic. I'll say this. I know I have this ginormous container of roasted garlic because I roasted like 20 something heads of garlic the other day. Just for anybody who does decide that they might want to do this or they might want to like do like bulk garlic, it's one of the things that just saves me so much time and like effort and all of that when I'm cooking. Is I will make a huge batch of the roasted garlic, but if you want to do fresh garlic, you can essentially mash up, like if you take a clove and then you run your blade of your knife kind of over it, like if you've chopped it finely, you've minced it, and then you kind of run your blade over it and turn it into a paste the same way that the anchovy that we did with the anchovy, or if you just mince it really finely, that's also fine. And then mix it with oil, like an olive oil or whatever kind of cooking oil you typically use when you're cooking. I got these. I've got 2 of them. And they're essentially a teaspoon, so maybe 4 or 5 grams of like per puck. It's basically like 2 cloves in here every time that I kind of like I'll take this and I'll use a spoon to kind of like put it in and then throw them on a baking sheet and stick it in a freezer, and then I'll pop out little pucks. And then those little pucks I just throw into a bag. And then I have like 2 cloves of garlic every time that I want one. If I need 1 clove of garlic, I cut it in half, toss the half one back in, and then I've got that. So it just makes life a lot easier. And then I'm not chopping garlic every time. So yeah, if you're interested in bulk making roasted garlic or doing like a huge batch of like minced garlic or something like that, you could put it in a food processor too if you really wanted to. It'd probably be super strong, but you could do that if you wanted to. So, okay, so let's move on. I'm rambling. 4 cloves of garlic. I'm just gonna take some of the pieces in here that I see that are like full cloves. 2. We might go a little bit heavy. Why not? There we go. Okay, so we've got some garlic. Where can you store and how long can you store that much roasted garlic? This is good in the refrigerator for a couple weeks, but I don't let this sit because I'm not going to get through this in like 2 weeks. So once I make it, what I try to do is like same day, but like we all know how life is. This will sit for like a couple of days, and then I'll try to get it into those and frozen as soon as possible. And they stay good for, let me think. They stay good. Actually, this goes in the meatballs too. They'll stay good in the freezer for several months. Like I've never had a problem with them, with like cooking with them 3-4 months even. So yeah, it's just pretty easy. And then like I see that I'm running out, I'll go buy a really big bag, bulk cook some, and kind of do the same thing. So like I do this maybe 4 times a year, and I'll just like do like prep a bunch of garlic and keep going. Okay. So some salt. We're going to be doing a teaspoon of salt, which is about 2.5 grams of salt. That in. And then I use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. If you are using a different brand of salt, like Morton salt, then please use a kitchen scale, or don't salt and then salt to taste at the end. It's really up to you. But the different crystal structures in salt make them denser or flakier. This salt is a very flaky salt. So if you're using a different brand of salt, there's a chance that you could oversalt. If you're using a different brand of kosher salt, there's a chance that you can oversalt your tomato sauce, and I don't want that for you. So if you want, you can maybe like half the salt and then salt to taste at the end. If you are using Diamond Crystal's kosher salt, then go ahead and follow the recipe as is. Okay, we need some brown sugar. I'm going to do another tablespoon packed, which is about 12.5 grams. I'm just going to clean this side so that I'm not touching it. If I'm using raw garlic, am I mincing? Yes. Yes, you're going to want to mince it. And if you want to go further than mincing it, let me go get, we're going to add, come on, get out there. I'll go get a clove of garlic, a fresh garlic, and I'll show you what to do. Okay, so if you have fresh head of garlic, let's pop one of these cloves out. Okay. What you're going to want to do, in order to not hurt yourself trying to get all this stuff off of it, if you set it down kind of on a flat side, or as flat as you can get it, put the blade of your knife on top and just give it a little bam, little crush, and then you're going to peel that off. Okay. You're going to get this minced down finally. And then once you get it about here, you can start to crush this into a paste. Now, the smaller the structure of the clove, the more flavor, the more garlic flavor you're gonna have. So if you think about it, if you like toss a couple of like crushed cloves of garlic into something and then fish them out later, you're giving it like a hint of garlic, right? If you do big dices, you're gonna get like pops of kind of garlic, but it's gonna be a stronger flavor in whatever sauce or whatever you're doing. If you do like slices of garlic, then that's gonna be even stronger. If you mince it, it's gonna be even stronger, and now it's paste. So it's gonna be a pretty strong kind of garlic flavor. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna just take the blade and you're gonna push down. And you're gonna kind of drag. And you'll literally hear all of the fibers that you're crushing to make this paste as you're doing it. You can probably stop here, or you can like go ham and really turn it into a paste, but this is a pretty good texture. It's cooking for so long that it will melt into the sauce. Okay. So there you go. Garlic. I'm gonna throw this away because I don't need it. Oh no. Blasphemy, the travesty. What have I done? Was that helpful, Lindsay? I do read minds. Someone just asked if I read minds because I answered the question in their head about dicing, mincing, slicing. Yeah, I do. I do, in fact. Really, I just ramble. That's exactly what you ended up doing. Good. Nice. Cool. Okay, so we've gotten past brown sugar. Let's see. I think that's as far as we go. Okay, so that's as far as we go with this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to mix this guy up. This is our quote-unquote umami paste, our tomato paste mixture, I think is how I refer to it. Now, because the garlic cloves, I probably should have used a fork. Because the garlic cloves are, my garlic cloves are already cooked because they're roasted, they're just going to mush into this. Like there's no chopping or mincing or any of that kind of stuff that I have to do. But you're just going to kind of incorporate it, get it relatively uniform. And then this gets cooked down in your oil and butter after you've toasted up your spices a bit. And just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to put that up here. I'm going to move into our spices. I'm going to get these together. Let's see. I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys the imperial and metric measurements for stuff. Okay. So let's do, we've got half a teaspoon of dried oregano, which is 0.6 grams. My dried oregano is here. I'm just going to go off of the imperial measurements today. There we go. Now I'm adding, there is also fresh oregano in this recipe, fresh oregano and fresh basil. You add dried spices at the beginning and you add fresh dried spices and herbs, dried herbs at the beginning, and then fresh herbs at the end, and spices and stuff at the end. I guess only herbs. aromatics are kind of added near the beginning. So like ginger and garlic and things like that as like a spice. But if you're gonna, dried herbs go at the beginning and fresh herbs go at the end. And that's essentially just because the dried herbs need to rehydrate and flavor the sauce, and things that are fresh are going to wilt and lose their flavor the longer they cook. And so you're kind of using them in tandem. So I know that I do have like dried oregano and fresh oregano, and you're like, why are you doing that? And it's essentially so that the dried oregano can rehydrate and bring that oregano flavor into the sauce. And then the fresh oregano just brings a freshness, and it's added kind of at the, like almost at the very end. So we've got our oregano, and then we're gonna do some fennel seed. And I actually do not have this pre-ground, so I'm about to do that real quick. Okay, and this is only a 1/4 teaspoon of fennel seed. Is like 0.7 grams. So we're just gonna do this real quick. Does anybody have any other questions? Ooh, that smells good. Fennel is the same flavor profile as black licorice or anise. If you don't like it, don't use it. Not a big deal. This is not an integral ingredient to this recipe, but it is up to you. I'm not going to use the fennel in the meatballs today. Typically I do. I don't feel like it today, but I am putting it in the sauce because I do like it a lot in the sauce. Okay, so we got our fennel. And then I'm using some Calabrian chili powder. You don't have to use Calabrian chili powder. You can use cayenne. You can use red pepper flakes. Really up to you. I think Calabrian chili just is a little bit sweeter, but also has more heat to it, and I like that. But I also, you can add more than what the recipe has. I have kids at home, and if I make things too spicy, they don't like me. So if you want to add more chili powder or whatever you plan to use, you can. Do it to taste. Do it to what you want. I'm using a 1/4 teaspoon. Let's see, which again is like 0.7 grams. Okay, we're gonna do some ground black pepper. It's about 1/2 teaspoon or 1.5 grams. Just gonna sit here. I need to get a pepper mill. What am I doing? This probably isn't even as much as I need. I guess what did I say? It's just 1/2 teaspoon. Okay, let's see. Almost. I'm 3/4 of the way. Oh, I'm confused. The bio says father of 2. That's my husband. This is his channel. I am the wife. And this is my cooking stream. Typically, he does video games. Every time you use your pepper grinder, you think the same thing. You're like, oh my gosh. Well, the thing is I like the pepper really finely ground as well. If you want it to be like a little more rustic and you want like big pops of pepper, that is cool. I'm technically also allergic to black pepper. So I do like really finely ground black pepper, and it takes forever. Yeah, I hijacked his stream. I will probably sneeze in a minute or two. Oh my gosh. Oh, I did plenty. Okay. That's good because I'm going to need more for meatballs. Okay, so we've got black pepper. Hopefully I won't turn that upside down and take the lid off and spill it all over the place later. We'll see how much the ADHD is ADHDing when we get to that part. Okay. Okay, so we've got everything that we need. These are all of our dried herbs and our spices. Now we are going to add some olive oil. I'm going to move this over. Let's clear some stuff out of the way so that I can start cooking for you guys. I'm going to get this tomato sauce going so that we can move on to the meatballs. Okay, I'm going to move this in front. Now that we've got all of our ingredients prepped, okay, you're gonna get your paste, your spices, a bay leaf. We've got our tomato onion mixture here, and then we've got our crushed tomatoes there, and then I need butter. Okay, so we're going to do a 1/4 cup of olive oil, which is about 60 milliliters. And then we're also going to do a tablespoon of unsalted butter. If you want to use salted, just use salted. That's not a big deal. Let me do, I'm not going to measure this. I'm just going to glug this. We're just going with it. This, you may have a little bit of noise going on in the background with this thing. The fan is pretty loud. Just apologies ahead of time. Okay. About a 1/4 cup, 60 milliliters, and then about a tablespoon, which is 14.174 grams of butter. Can we tell that I do things with butter a lot? We're gonna get this melting down. I'm gonna grab, you can use like anything that is flat bottomed. Actually, I like this is smaller. A flat bottomed spatula of some kind. I'm using wood for this guy, but you can also use just like silicone as long as it's heat proof. And so essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to melt this butter down, and I know that we're ready to start toasting our spices when the butter starts to bubble. So we're going to wait for that to happen. This cooktop is more powerful than my regular stovetop when it comes to like the power levels. So I always have to be careful. I like keep it like lower than I feel like I need to. Just put your stovetop on like medium, maybe medium high. I've got this thing under half power because it gets like really hot really fast. Most silicone is heat resistant, that's true. But there are, yes, some of the quality of silicone or the thickness of silicone will determine how high of a temperature it can go up to. Most silicones are fine at like 400, and then like it depends, and they'll go up to somewhere around like 500 or so. Fahrenheit. Sorry, I don't know what the comparative is there with temperature in Celsius. I mean, I guess it's around what? Around 200 and change Celsius for most silicones. And then it'll go up. So like low 200s. Yeah, this was a Christmas present. Isn't that great? With the embroidery and everything. Okay, so we're starting to bubble. I'm hearing a little bubble. So we're going to add our spices. And you are immediately going to smell all of those spices kind of start to toast and get in on that action. It smells really good. Typically what I'll do is if I'm cooking a stew and I'm building flavor and I want to be able to scrape the bottom of the pan because I'm getting like a fond, I'm doing making a fond on purpose. So like say I'm braising beef or something like that, and I have to scrape and deglaze a pan, I will use wood because this is a stronger, like I have much more ability to scrape the bottom of the pan than I do with silicone. So like I'll use silicone if it's just something that I need to stir and I just need to make sure nothing is sticking to the bottom. But if I am actually sticking food to the bottom of the pan to build flavor on purpose, then I'll stick with something that's wooden. And I don't use metal. I have metal utensils, but I don't use metal utensils with almost any of my pans. Okay, so that's good. We're gonna add our paste in. And I totally got rid of my spatula. We're gonna grab this back. And now you're gonna cook this down a little bit. Again, to just build flavor and concentrate that flavor a little bit more. And then we can start adding our liquids in. Can you hear it? Yum. Essentially, what we are doing right now is dry cooking. So I know that when you're frying something, it feels like it's in a liquid, right? Or like a liquid type something or other, and you feel like it's not actually, like it's still dry cooking, because the point is that you're pulling moisture from something. You're not cooking it in something wet. You're not cooking it in water. You're not cooking it in stock. You're not cooking it in cream or milk or whatever. This is like essentially once the butter has no more water in it, you're just frying it, right? So we're condensing that flavor, concentrating that flavor through dry cooking by kind of like shallow frying these ingredients. Okay, that's nice. Now I'm gonna add this guy in. Fresh basil, yes, sorry, Lindsay. Fresh basil and oregano happen later. So the dry spices are going in now so that they can rehydrate and flavor the sauce. And then the spices and herbs. The dry herbs are rehydrating. They can flavor the sauce. And then the fresh herbs are going in later so that they don't wilt and lose their flavor, and you can get a little bit of that bright freshness from them. The longer you cook fresh herbs, the less flavor you will have. And they can sometimes get a little bitter if they get too hot. So, which won't happen with this just because it's liquid, but still. Now at this point, I'm telling you, you are welcome to taste this. But it's not going to be good. This onion is very astringent. Let it cook for at least 30 minutes before you decide to taste it. And it will continue to sweeten the longer that you cook it. Got rid of my spatula again. Ugh. There's nothing wrong with trying this. If you really want to know what things taste like, it's honestly a great idea to always be tasting. But raw onion sauce, not the best. For those of you who are cooking along with me, rinse out your blender pitcher and lid if you got the lid as messy as I did, because we are going to be using this again for the meatballs. So just give it a quick rinse. Sorry that I'm off camera for so long, but she's gonna get used again. I'm gonna leave that off to the side. And I'm grabbing a hand towel because I keep using paper towels. Also, your bay leaf goes in now. I am going to move this to my actual cooktop behind me. And I'm going to put a lid on this and let her go for as long as we possibly can before we add meatballs to it. Okay. Turn this guy off. And now we get to do meatballs. Okay. If you bought pre-ground meat, nice. Congratulations. You get a little bit of a break right now. If you read through the recipe and you see in there a note in the FAQ section that talks about grinding your own meat, congratulations, you get to do that along with me. I like to grind my own meat just because it's cheaper, for no other reason. I guess if I'm doing mixtures of things, sometimes, particularly with beef, it's nice to grind your own meat because then you can determine what cuts you're getting and how much fat you have in the sausages and meatballs and loaves and like whatever. I have a burger recipe that is not on the website, but hopefully will be shortly. And I get to kind of choose which cuts of meat that I want to use in that, which is nice, instead of just like buying what the store already did like pre-ground for you. But in this case, get some ground chuck, get some ground pork, and you're good to go. Move this stuff out of the way. So I have partially frozen meat here. And I have a KitchenAid mixer. That is heavy. Okay. That I've got a meat grinder attachment for. Now I have too much pork, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take out what I need, and then I'll grind that later. I'll make some kind of, maybe I'll make pot stickers or something later. Okay. Set this guy up. I like to have a medium grind for meatballs. If it's too fine of a grind, I feel like they get too dense and they mush too much. And if it's too coarse, they don't stay together very well. So we've got a medium grind on there. Let me do, we're actually not ready for this yet, but it is going to happen. We're gonna first start the panade. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start everything in this bowl and just build and build and build and build as we go. I do also still need the blender over here. Okay, the blender is going to be for onion, again, onion and egg. I like blending onion up for these kinds of recipes. The meatballs don't cook like long enough for me to like really get the onions like melting into them. If you were planning on cooking your meatballs like low and slow all day, cooking in the sauce, like that is fine if you want to just like dice your onions and go from there. But because I'm literally baking in the oven for 20-30 minutes and then tossing them in the sauce for like 15, there's no reason to not blend up the onion. It's just going to incorporate better. You'll have flavor all throughout, and you won't get you won't be hitting like pieces of onion when you're biting into your meatball. So, okay, I'm gonna preheat this guy to 425 Fahrenheit, 218 Celsius, and then I'm going to start working on the panade. So I'm gonna grab milk, and I'm gonna grab bread. Okay. And we're gonna need to cut up oven is small. I might just slow cook. If you really want to, you can pan fry your meatballs, or you can deep fry your meatballs. I think the shallow frying, like pan frying them, is probably, in my opinion, better than deep frying. I feel like deep frying gets them a little oily, and then once you add them into the sauce, like the sauce can tend to get a little bit like oily. But if you just like shallow fry them and like pan fry them, the only thing that you have to worry about is like splattering, obvious, splattering, and then they'll kind of misshape. So we're like going to be making like perfect balls and then baking them right. And then you can only do so many at a time before you're crowding the pan. So like it's kind of like a give and take. But you're absolutely like if you don't have space in your oven, the best thing that you can do is just shallow fry them on the stove top. If that's helpful. I hope it is. Okay. I'll get a bread knife. I actually like to, I didn't do it this time just because I kind of assumed that most people would just have like fresh bread. I actually like to cut this when it's half frozen just because then it doesn't mush. But yeah, this is just a random Italian loaf. You just want some like rustic white bread of some kind. I think I picked this up from like Walmart or something like that. But we need about 1.5 cups of this, which equates to, how many grams am I going for? That's the tomato sauce. I'm going for 85 grams. And you want these to be in smallish cubes. You'll pan fry them. You got it. Yeah. I like baking in the oven just because then it's like one and done. Everything goes in. They like fully cook on all sides. You're not like kind of having to turn them in a pan and get everything. But you don't get as nice of a like crisp browning, like that sear that you would get on like a steak or whatever. You get better in like a pan. So like there's a trade-off to everything. If you go to the website, I do talk about different ways to cook the meatballs. And so you can read a little bit more. I think I covered most of it, but you can read a little bit more about like, why you should do it or what it means and that kind of thing. I am actually going to cut this so that I'm taking just the middle of the bread out. So I'm kind of cutting the outsides off and I'm essentially scooping out the middle and cutting it into cubes. This is why I like it half frozen. It's because it's just easier to kind of do this part. How do I want to do this? I feel like I'm going to make like citrus supremes or something like that. Like cutting down the outside, the peel off the citrus. Bread. I love bread. Okay. Intrusive thoughts. Do I make croutons with the crusts? Yeah. Sometimes I'll make croutons. It depends. Like these aren't very thick. So a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll put these in the oven at a really low temperature and I'll just make breadcrumbs with them. Okay. What did I say? I needed 85 grams. Okay. We've got too much. Yay, I get to eat some more. I've got about 10 grams too much, which is not a lot. It's a bigger piece of bread than I thought I was going to get. Okay. I'm going to eat these, and that's going to be delicious. Okay. Okay. Frozen versus a little stale. A little stale also would work. You might have to let it sit with the milk a little bit longer if it's slightly stale so that it can rehydrate properly, because you need it to turn into absolute mush. So that would be the only thought. If it's fresh, like it's going to like hydrate up with that milk super fast. And if it's a little stale, it just might take a little longer. So just let it sit a little extra. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of cut strips. If you want to break this up with your hands, you can. If you're tearing it, you need to make sure that you're tearing it into pretty small pieces and that you're not compressing the bread. So if you're gonna like tear it, I would suggest you're kind of just like feeling kind of along the grain and kind of pulling it apart into like sheets and doing something like this and being really gentle with it. Because if you're going to tear and you're pushing down as you tear, you're compressing it. And you don't want to do that, because then it's not going to, you're going to have like clumps of bread instead of, again, like a mush. And so essentially what I'm doing, I'm cutting this specifically so that I've got like really light, uncompressed pieces that are then going to help the panade kind of be uniform in texture and really mix in with the meatballs. I always worry if they'll get cooked all the way through with pan cooking. You only really need to cook the outside. You don't need to fully cook the inside of the meatball at the start, because they're going to go sit in that sauce. And that sauce is bubbling. It's boiling. It's over 200 degrees, 100 degrees Celsius. So I guess it's like what, 212 or something like that, Fahrenheit, 100 Celsius. It's boiling. So you're going to hit that internal, but I mean, you can check it. So like if you just like toss the meatballs in and you let them cook in there, and then you just take a thermometer and find several meatballs and just check their internal temperature and just make sure that they come to temp in the sauce. So the point of baking and doing the pan fry or deep fry or any of that kind of stuff is to make sure that the meatballs don't fall apart in the sauce. So if I could, in theory, take a meatball and toss them directly into the sauce and like kind of poach them in tomato sauce, but there's no guarantee that they're not going to fall apart and just turn into like a meat sauce. And so the cooking is just to make sure that you're taking all those proteins and you're kind of shrinking them and forcing them to like solidify, right, and connect. And then they don't fall apart when they get in the sauce. Like that's the purpose of all that. It's not technically about getting that internal temperature in the oven. Making homemade breadcrumbs or just using bread as is for the panade. This bread is specifically for the panade. Missed the last 5 minutes. What are you cutting right now? I'm cutting up some an Italian like white bread. I cut honestly, this looks like more than a cup and a half. What does it say on my thing here? Yeah, 1.5. So I've got 1.5 cups of Italian bread. It'll probably be that much once I cut it down. It looks bigger than that. But it's about 85 grams of bread that I'm kind of cutting into just really small squares and trying really hard not to compress. Ooh. That sounds really good. Been on a bread making kick lately. Now I'm thinking about making some hoagie rolls for meatball subs. Yum. Do it. Panada? I'm making a panade. If that's the Italian version, if I'm like saying it, if that's the same thing, then yes. That is exactly what I'm doing. I do like to make some like meatball sandwiches and meatball subs with these meatballs. Trying really hard not to press this too much. You got a bunch of slices of provolone today? Yeah. Do it. I'm always going to condone this kind of stuff. See, like it's so soft. If this were half frozen, I could just cut the squares, but now I'm having to kind of tear them a little bit. But yeah, you want these to kind of be, I guess we want these to be about 1/2 inch pieces. So about 1¼ centimeters a piece. Like cubed, squared. We do have fresh Parmesan. Yes. The massive cord coming out of the stand mixer. This is its cord, bro. Look at this thing. And it's like danger orange. Do you want me to put it on the other side so it's not so like in your face? Oh, shoot. There we go. Better? Better? A little cord management? Do I have a TT page for my business? I have a website. If you go to alittlespoon.com, you can check out the website. I'm also on Instagram at _little_spoon. And the recipes get posted in both places, which is so not what I'm supposed to be doing. Social media is supposed to take you to your website. But I post the recipes on social media. There's not as much information just because of the nature of Instagram. They don't give you the ability to like do anything but post pictures. So I'm kind of like making slides of the recipe and I'm allowed 10 of them. So like the recipe is always in there. The ingredient list is always in there. There tends to be some notes. If it's a really big, like an extensive recipe, either with ingredients or with technique and like steps, so like the instructions are really long, you'll get like minimal notes, but there will be some. But the website has everything. Yeah, I get all of our roasts at Costco. Lindsay, where are we? How are you doing? For anybody that's cooking with me, how are we doing? Your bread's soaking. Oh my gosh, Lindsay's so fast. Speed up, stop chatting. I'm chatting too much. I've never had a pork shoulder smell bad right out of the vacuum bag. I have had oxtail smell weird out of the vacuum bags, which freaks me out. They're just so much cheaper at Costco than they are at our other local grocery stores. And I can get more. So like, because I cook mostly in bulk, right? So I'll do like a huge prep. And I'll buy like 4 pounds of oxtail at a time. And I don't know. It makes me a little worried when it smells like that right out of the bag. But I'm like, hey, it says sell by, like it says it's okay. So you don't think you've seen oxtail? It's usually trying to think about where it's usually by. It's not typically with all the other cuts of meat. It's usually like on its own over by. They usually do like what are they called? Like the back ribs. So like when you get bone-in ribeye or boneless ribeye, the bones that run on the back of the ribeye, if you're getting boneless, they'll be taken off, and then Costco will package up just the ribs, and you can buy those, and I use those for stock. So the oxtail and the ribs are usually in the same place, and I want to say that it's usually by like where you can get pancetta and like all the kind of just like random cuts. They like put them there. Okay, we got our bread. We grab my milk. Okay. And we're going to go, it's 6 tablespoons. I feel like caring about this. So essentially a 1/4 cup and 2 tablespoons. I'm just going to take the lazy way out instead of doing all of that. I'm going to be a little lazy. Okay. Lost the lid for a second. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of give this a little bit of a mix, just like a gentle kind of situation here, so that the milk is really kind of touching all of those pieces and it can really soak. Because you want it to soften even further and soak really into this and then sit. Okay. I'm going to pause for just a second. I want to stir my sauce. For anyone who's cooking with me, check your sauce, give it a stir. Make sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom. I can really smell onion, like really smell onion. Okay. Let that cook even more. Okay. Okay, now we're gonna do, so I've got this sitting. Now we're gonna, I brought this out because I knew I'd need it and it's in my way. Now we're gonna do the Parmesan and the parsley. Okay, and we're gonna do eggs and onion. Okay, so I've got 2 eggs. And then that onion is coming back to haunt us. Stay, so we need another 1/4 of an onion. And these are getting tossed kind of like right in. Okay, and again, it's about 65 grams of onion, which I think for this was half the onion. This is a pretty small onion. Let's see, we'll double check. A little bit more than I like. Okay. Again, just give it like a really rough chop. It's getting blended. And then these go in to your blender. Okay, and then eggs are just going to get cracked right in there. So crack your egg. on a flat surface, dunk her in. I'm kind of making like a bit of an emulsification here by whipping up these eggs and the onion puree in this blender. It's just going to make it really easy to fully incorporate everything together. Okay. I am going to blend this and then just let it sit while we do the other stuff. I will go on mute again. Let's see. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we're back. This just gets set off to the side. It's going to get added into our bread and milk mixture when we are ready for it. Okay. Now we're going to need about 2 tablespoons. Oh, let's see where I have the grams for that. It's about 6.5 grams of fresh parsley, chopped. Parsley and cilantro. Let's talk a little bit about them real quick. You can eat the stems. So like a lot of herbs, a lot of fresh herbs, they tell you not to to kind of like pick the leaves off and use just the leaves. When it comes to parsley and cilantro, they actually have the same flavor in the stem, and it's actually a more concentrated flavor. So I like to use the stems for things like flavoring soups and sauces, for blending into soups and sauces. So if you make say like a tomatillo salsa or something like that, like you can blend the cilantro stems into that, and you're going to be like in a really good place, and it'll have more flavor than if you had just used the leaves. So leaves typically, I would say, use for like a garnish, or if you don't want those pieces, like you don't like texture of the stem left over in whatever you're eating. So in this case, use just the leaves, but if you wanted to use these stems later for something else, you definitely can. You don't need to like only use the leaves and then like throw the parsley away. Do you have any recommendations for adding flavor if you're super sensitive to onion? By sensitive, do you mean like you're allergic to it, or that you don't like it? You can do shallots. They're probably the thing that I would go to borderline yes. I would say try shallots. And if you need to, and the same thing that I do. So I am allergic to several things. If I cook them and I denature the enzymes that I am allergic to, I'm less allergic to it. Now isn't for everyone. Please, if you're allergic to something, don't just decide, oh well, if I cook it, that means I can eat it. Like especially if you are like very, very allergic to something. But for people who have sensitivities to foods, and you do have a bit of an allergy, if you cook it, they tend to be less harsh on your stomach, less harsh on your system, and so that would probably also be a suggestion. But I would say trying some shallot would be a better option instead of onions. It is more expensive, but the flavor and the enzymes are less. Yeah, Carrie said it was safe. No, let's not do that, please. All right, so I need 6.5 grams. Okay, we're good here. Chop this down. I'm kind of going to stack the leaves a little bit. Just kind of get them on top of each other and do it like chop a little bit at a time. We're kind of going to chiffonade this slightly. So I'm going to stack roll. And then just kind of ribbon them, send them off to the side, do the same thing with another group. If your pile is too thick, then you're just gonna crush the leaves instead of actually slicing through them. I guess depending on how sharp your knife is. We're gonna just do this in like 3 stacks. Have I ever added powdered gelatin to meatballs? No, but something that I really wanna do, stick with me. And I don't know if this would be a good idea for these just because I already have so much liquid and so much moisture built into them because I'm not using breadcrumbs and I'm like have like all of these kind of like I've got fresh ingredients and lots of hydration. I desperately want to make a super thick like chicken stock and cut that into cubes and to like really or like dice it or like just mix it up and get it like crazy, like small pieces, and then add that into my meatballs so that there's stock in the meatball that then melts into the meatball when it's cooking. Sounds great. I saw somebody do that and I was like, oh man, that is a game changer. Okay, now I'm just gonna kind of cut across the ribbons that I've made and give them a bit of a rough chop. And then that's good. Okay. Next we're gonna grate some Parmesan, however we should say that. You need quite a bit. I'm gonna get another bowl. Okay. I'm looking for 22.5 grams. It's gonna mound quite a bit if you're microplaning fresh Parmesan. If you're using a grater, you're not gonna have as much Parmesan because they're gonna be thicker slices. You will get pops. It's fine if you want to do that. But there will be less to go around, so it won't incorporate in the same way if they're thicker pieces, right? So like the difference between a box grater, right? Even if you're using like the small side, is going to be very different than to this. So I guess where do we have the camera? Okay, it's on the board. So you can see if I use a box grater and I've got these really big clumps, you're gonna get nice little like pops of Parmesan, which could be really nice. That's like A-okay to do it. This is the side. So your fine grating side on a box grater gives you this, and then a microplane is gonna give you these kind of fine curly cues, right? So this is gonna incorporate better, and it's gonna give just an overall kind of saltiness that you would have like more concentrated versions of if you did bigger pieces or used a box grater. All of those are perfectly fine. You might want to, trying to think about how that might incorporate if you did a different amount. You might want to add more. They will be slightly like saltier. You'll have a more Parmesan flavor if you actually add more Parmesan to the mix. But then it'll be incorporated throughout and you won't have like, this is going to be like 22 grams of this is a couple tablespoons, maybe. It's not 3/4 of a cup. You'll get maybe 1/4 of a cup before you hit that. So you're putting 1/4 of a cup and like 2 pounds of meatballs versus, essentially 3/4 of a cup that are really finely done and like kind of getting mixed all throughout. So you almost would want to have more Parmesan, but then that's going to change the flavor of the meatball. So just like be aware of that if you're going to do it, but you can. You totally can, and it would probably taste very good. Okay, so 22 grams. Need to set up a big screen monitor in the kitchen for chat? Why? Am I not paying attention to you enough? I do. I've got a fancy apron. It was a gift, and I love it. It is harder to do this with very large piece of Parmesan. Okay. I could take it. I'm halfway there. Whew. Five more grams. Okay. And we're done. We did it. But like, I mean, 3/4 of a cup, right, from this microplane is not 3/4. It's not equivalent of like a different kind of grater. Made a Parmesan mess. Okay. So now we've got our Parmesan. We've got our chopped up parsley. I'm going to make more space and move things out of the way. Also going to need salt and pepper. Oh, I'm going to add some pepper. I don't have pepper in this ingredient, but I feel like doing it. Dried oregano again, and then our fennel again. So I'm not going to do the fennel. I don't want the fennel in these today. But essentially the same thing. You just want some ground fennel, or you can do what I did. And if you have fennel seed, you can just toss it in a mortar and pestle or a spice grinder, and you can make yourself some ground fennel. Okay. We'll do our oregano and our salt and have them handy. Now we're going to start bringing this kind of panade mixture together, and then we'll move on to the meat. So we're going to, I guess, add this in now. Next comes our herbs. Those suckers are going to go in there. And our Parmesan. Everything is going in the bowl. And then we're going to do the oregano and the salt. So we're going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of oregano and a tablespoon of Diamond Crystal kosher salt. Tablespoon of kosher salt. I know that sounds absolutely terrifying. It will be okay, I promise. You're mixing this into 2 pounds of meat. So I know it sounds like a lot, but it will carry through, and I promise it will be good. So the metric on that is 8.8 grams of salt. I'm using a 1/2 tablespoon. That's why I did that twice. And then I also am having to double up on this one. I've got a 1/4 teaspoon here, but we need a 1/2 teaspoon of the dried oregano. So you'll see 2 of these. A 1/2 teaspoon of dry oregano is 0.6 grams of dried oregano. And that's it. I'm going to add a little bit of pepper today. It's not in the recipe. It's not necessary. But I've ground up so much pepper that I kind of just want to, might as well use it. We're gonna add some pepper in. Okay. Now we mix. Again, if you do not want to touch the food, I understand. Use a fork. You can use a fork if you don't want to touch it. But this is really gonna get it nice and mixed. Now you squish. And the same thing that you did with the tomatoes, you're gonna do here. This looks so gross. I promise this is good. So essentially what you're doing is you want this to like be a paste and as mushed as possible, again, so that it incorporates uniformly when you start mixing all of the meat in. It doesn't sound great. Okay. So yeah, so we've got a paste. All of our bread pieces are nice and light. I don't have any compressed, like really compressed pieces where you can feel like a piece of bread that isn't like ready to fully dissolve into the meatballs, which is great, right? Because like if you think about it, when you bite into a meatball, right, you want that to be a relatively uniform texture. And if you get a random piece of just bread that's just like a hard compressed piece of bread and you can like see it, it's not a great experience. Okay, so we're gonna just leave her here. We're gonna grind our meat into it. Now, I need some soap. I just touched egg. I'm gonna check my sauce one more time before I start grinding the meat into this. Because now I'm really starting to smell it and I wanna make sure, I've got it on a pretty high temperature and I wanna make sure that we're not starting to stick to the bottom because remember, I have a rustic version of this tomato sauce. I did not blend everything. So it's more apt to stick to the bottom of the pan or the Dutch oven or pot or whatever you're using than the blended version will. Move all this stuff over. Okay. Now I have a it's pre-weighed, so this is a pound or like 450 grams of chuck. I've cut it, so it's pre-cut for the size that I need to grind, and it's partially frozen. You always want to, if you're going to grind your own meat, you always want the meat that you're grinding to be partially frozen so that it maintains its structure as it's coming out, as it's kind of getting pushed through, ground up, and then coming out of the grinder. If it is too warm, it's just going to be mush. And then you're going to have like really dense, non-aerated sausages, burgers, meatloaves, meatballs, whatever you're making with it. And so you want it to be partially frozen. So if you decided that you were going to grind it, you would kind of cut these before, like you would, essentially what I would say to do is make the sauce. So start making the sauce just like we did. First thing first is the sauce. Then get to your meat, cut up the pieces of meat that you need, right? A pound of each of these, 450 grams or so of each of these of pork and chuck. Then cut them into sizes that will fit into your grinder. I would put them onto a baking sheet with like a silicone mat or like parchment paper or something like that. And then I would have them in a single layer, stick that in your freezer and let them partially freeze while you're doing everything else, and then come back and take those out of the freezer, grind them after you've kind of gotten to this step, which is essentially what I've done. So I'm going to need to weigh this out because this is 3¼ pounds, which is quite a bit. And I need to make sure that I am not doing too much. Let's use one of our bowls. I didn't check the sauce yet. I'm gonna do that. We'll weigh out some of the pork and then I'll put it back in the refrigerator. Excuse me. It's squishy, Lindsay. It's getting hot. I'm gonna turn this down. We're gonna give it another little stir. Woo. Yeah, I'm sticking a little bit. I'm just scraping the bottom and making sure that I'm stirring this. I think I'm gonna give this a taste at this point. Still looks a little light in color, but she looks like she's ready to have a little taste. Yep, that's good. Okay, next. I'm going to weigh out the pork. I'm going to open everything up and I'm going to get grinding. Come on. Okay, we got a pound of pork. I'm gonna put this back in the refrigerator and wash my hands because pork is dangerous. And I don't feel like getting sick. A little bit of a precarious situation in the refrigerator. It'll be fine. The dishes aren't actually too bad. It's not too bad. Okay. Just gonna put these in the same bowl. They're going into the same bowl later. Might as well. Come on. Okay, let's get going. Okay, so now what I'm gonna try to do, this will be good to know for people who have gotten pre-ground as well. So when you're adding it, don't add like the pork and then the beef on top of it. Try to do like try to mix them up a little bit and have them kind of go into this kind of in separate globs so that when you do go to mix it, you're not attempting to like mix an entire layer of one meat through another layer and then into everything else. It's just easier if you break it up. Like you won't have to mix as much, and then you'll have a more less dense, less compressed, like you'll have a lighter mixture. So I'm kind of going to do like a little bit of beef and then a little bit of pork and have them go in kind of separate. And then when you do begin to mix, if you've got pre-ground and you're decided that you want to mix while I'm grinding, you're going to make a kind of claw with your hand. Oop, beef falling on my fingers. And you're going to kind of claw around like this. And so you'll scoop, flip, and then claw through to mix. You don't want to squish the way that we were squishing because it's going to compress those meatballs. And then they're going to be, they're just going to be really dense, and we don't want that. Okay. A little bit of pork. A little bit of beef. I'm getting really hungry too. The tomato sauce smells so good. Okay. This should make somewhere between 24 and 26 meatballs. If you're using a I use a 2 tablespoon cookie scoop. It's a number 24 cookie scoop. If you're searching, it's literally like you'll see a number sign or a pound sign or a hashtag, depending on which generation you're from. When you go to find it, if you're going to like specifically buy one, it will say the number 24 on it. That is a specific size. This one says it actually on that metal piece that like swipes through. It says it has a number 24 on it. They make about 50-gram meatballs, but I like having the meatballs be uniform in size so they all cook at the same time. It's easier than trying to eyeball it. If you want to make smaller meatballs, you can. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You'll just have more. Not a big deal. Okay, that's all of that. I'm going to make this go kind of fast to get the last bits pushed through. And then we can start mixing. Okay. And that's how the sausage is made, kind of. We're going to undo that, move her out of the way. Ugh. She's heavy. Okay. And now we're going to start scooping and shaping and mixing and baking. Okay, so what I said, so here, well, if you haven't already mixed, if you were waiting for me very patiently, I'm just kind of going to bring my hand underneath and scoop and flip over. Lindsay, you will be very good at this because you make sourdough bread. It is very similar to that. It's kind of one of those like no need. If you do like a pizza dough or like a no need focaccia or sourdough or something like that, where basically all you're doing is kind of scooping and like pulling, where you're kind of just like pulling from the bottom and you're not actively like kneading. It's basically the same concept, right? So I'm just kind of scooping just to make sure that I'm moving everything around, right? And then I'm going to take my hand and I'm just going to kind of claw my way through this. And it's very cold because the meat was partially frozen. You get used to it. I won't feel my hand in a minute, but that's okay. Stretch and folds with meatballs. How great is that? Look at the transferable skills from baking to cooking, right? You never know where like a technique is like, oh, I've done this before. This feels really familiar to me. But you can see like I'm not squeezing anything. I'm not compressing anything. I'm kind of poking like fingers in and just kind of moving it around and then folding. The point is to make sure that this stays loose and aerated. God, this is not a good cooking day for ASMR. IMO. I mean, maybe some people like these noises. This is not a me day. Okay. Okay, so I'm happy with this. You can see that the texture, the mixture is pretty uniform. I can see that I've got everything kind of running really well through. I'm not seeing like really solid parts of the panade or of one of the two meats. Pork is a lighter color than the beef will be, so you can see them typically when there's like too much of one or the other in a section. This looks pretty well mixed. So I'm gonna start making my meatballs. I'm gonna start scooping. If you're making a meatball, so now like I'm essentially gonna, typically what I like to do is I like to scoop and just set them down so I have a clean hand, and then I will roll them after I've scooped everything. It's kind of just like, honestly, it's like an efficiency thing, and just like a cleanliness thing for me. You can do however, like you can do this. You're at home. You're not cooking for anybody. You're not in a restaurant or anything like that. You don't got to worry about it. If you don't mind, rolling and then coming back to it and picking something, getting this a little gunked up, like it's not a big deal. But I will typically scoop first and then roll. And then while you're rolling, you'll notice that you'll get kind of a buildup, like a ring on your hand because you're kind of rolling like this, and that meatball is going to cause like a little bit of like a dried ring on your hand. If you don't like the feeling of that, you can just have like a bowl of water handy and you can dip your fingers in and it'll help kind of keep that from happening so much. But again, like you can see, like I'm kind of sliding a little bit once it's in, but I'm not like compressing really hard as I'm scooping. I'm kind of just like running it along and then making sure that I'm filling. I'm almost using my fingers for some of this too, to just like take it off if it's, because I don't want to compress these. But I'm not actively like smushing and packing the cookie scoop. Okay. Wipe down this surface when I'm done. Now we're gonna have about 20 minutes or so while these are cooking in the oven where we're like not doing anything. So if you guys have any questions about anything that I've been doing, any of the ingredients, if you want to change the recipe in any way, and you have a question about it, I can go ahead and I can answer those while these are in the oven. Just typically do 5. So typically the way that I do this is I'll do 5 and then 4 in rows. So it'll look something like this. They're not going to expand like a cookie, so you can put them close to each other. But you don't want them to be touching because you want the heat to touch the whole surface area of the meatball. I'm going to end up rolling these, so they're going to get taken off the tray and put back down, but just for space-wise. while I'm doing this. Almost done. Ooh, sorry for the scraping. Okay. Almost done. Okay. So now I'm going to shape these. And the way that I'm going to do that is just really simple. Oh my goodness. Yes. So I'm just going to take it and just gently this, and then that's your meatball. So basically we're just kind of tidying it up a little bit. Got parsley all over me. Yes, be gentle. Be gentle. We're not compressing. We're just gently rolling to make sure that like all those little pieces that are kind of like hanging off. I mean, some of these are like oddly shapen. We're just kind of getting them relatively round and making sure that everything is well, like all the lines are well made, I suppose. Yeah, I can't imagine what these would be like if I added some gelatin, like chicken stock, to these. The texture would probably be crazy. I mean, they're already going to be so like juicy to begin with. I think adding chicken stock would just send this over the edge. But I don't know, like, in a good way or a bad way. Like, is it too much moisture? Or would it be perfection? Almost done. Yeah, I don't know if you can see, I've got kind of like around like this like line here for where the balls are being rolled. And that can just get, depending on like this isn't too bad because there aren't a lot here. Typically when I make these, I will make a minimum of 100 at a time. So like sometimes I need like a little water bowl. I'm like, I'm getting a little grimy here. But because I will scale this recipe like 6 times. Like I kid you not, made 16 pounds of meatballs, which is too much at a time. So that did happen. Okay, so I'm going to wash my hands and then get these in the oven. And then we can chat. Okay. Into the oven they go. There you go. Okay, so those are gonna cook. You want them to be like brown around the whole thing, around the whole like meatball, and then they might get you might get a little bit of a crust on them, but it's really just making sure that they're like cooked completely on the outside again, so that when we add them to the sauce, the meatballs don't break apart. Is there anything else? There's not really much else. Once they come out, you can toss them directly into the sauce if you want, or you can kind of toss whatever you want to actually eat the same day into the sauce, cook them for like 15 minutes, do that whole thing. If you want, you can make pasta right about now. Or I guess pasta when they come out of the oven. If you get pasta water ready, you can toss the pasta in and have that cook. If it's fresh pasta, then you can wait a little longer, obviously. But if you have like boxed pasta, you can make spaghetti or whatever style of noodle you want to do. As soon as they come out of the oven and go into the sauce, because they're going to cook in the sauce for about 15 minutes or so, just make sure that internal temperature comes up to the correct thing, and that a little bit of the fat that will come off of the meatballs, because like you'll see it, and I'll show you when I take it out, there's just going to be like liquid fat like all around the meatballs. And so we're basically going to pick up the meatballs and put them into the sauce, and some of that fat that's on the outside and a lot of that meat flavor is going to imbue the sauce. So you can add all of them in. You can, this tomato sauce is still a good tomato sauce with or without. It's really up to you what you want to do. If you do plan not to eat all of these, I mean, there's 26 meatballs. That's a lot. It's a lot of meatballs. So if you want to eat 4 of them, you can take the remaining meatballs, which I will be doing today, and put them on a separate tray. You're not going to put them on the tray that they were baked in, because again, that fat is there and it will solidify, and then you'll be trying to break meatballs apart and it'll be crazy. So essentially what you're going to do is you would take the meatballs and you would transfer them to another tray with a silicone mat. What I like to do is I will like pick up a meatball and I'll kind of scrape some of that fat off and set it onto the silicone mat. That will get deep frozen, okay, or into a freezer, and just have them freeze individually for several hours. And then I'll take that and I'll just toss them into a baggie. And I'll, meatballs this day, whatever, and then that gets put into the freezer. And you can just pull out as many meatballs as you'd like to have, and it can go into the sauce. So the sauce can be put, again, into a separate container. It's good in your fridge for probably 3 or 4 days, because we have added meatballs to it. Stick with me. Because there is animal meat in that at this point, or fat at this point, then you kind of have to play by the same rules. It's not like a vegetable something or other or fruit something or other, so it can't just like sit around in your fridge. But you can freeze it. So put it into separate containers, freeze it into whatever serving size you want, and you essentially have made several meals for yourself or other people. Okay, let's scroll back and see if we have any questions for anybody who's here on the live. I've been talking a lot. Ooh. You call it a pound sign. Oh, that's when I was doing the number for the cookie scoop. Yeah, I call it a pound sign too. In my head, I say pound sign, and then I'm like, everybody calls it a hashtag now. But I think it would have been a pound sign and then a number sign and then a hashtag. And I don't know if there's anything new past that, but I feel like pound is the oldest of that. And that is where my brain goes. And then I have to like change it, kind of like I'm speaking another language. That like pound sign is like my native language. Okay. Ooh, Farley. Okay, so Farley just, man, we've already ground everything. I wish that I had seen this. A slice of bread through the grinder clears it out pretty well. The next time that I make these, I will check that. And depending on the results, I might add that as a note into the recipe on the website. Because I can go back and I can update that. So I will absolutely try that. That is a great tip. Thank you so much. Do I have any meat substitutions that I would suggest? I can't with good accuracy give you, like, I can give you ideas, but because I've never made this with a meat substitution, I don't know how that's going to end up. You can probably do something with like an extra firm tofu and beans so that you're mimicking the crumbly nature of like a ground beef or something like that, but then also the pork has so much fat in it that you're going to need something that kind of is similar to fat, which is where beans would come in. I don't know what ratio that would look like. I imagine it would probably be like 3/4 tofu and 1/4 beans. But that would be an experiment. I don't know, but that makes sense in my head. I'm sure there are also the Beyond, like the Beyond Burger meat and stuff like that you could probably use. I don't know if you're using Beyond Meats. I don't know if the texturally what that will do, especially because I have both pork and beef in this. So if you're doing a Beyond Meat, I don't know if they have like a pork version or if it's just like red meat, or it's like just like beef. So I'm not too sure, but maybe that'll give you an idea to kind of experiment with. Maybe. Let's see. What's the key to a good meatball? I think the key to a good meatball is maintaining moisture after cooking and having a lighter, softer texture. So like having a soft texture and having moisture in your meatball, I think is the key to a good meatball, because you can have all of the flavor in the world. But if your meatball is like really compressed and dry, there's nothing that's going to save it. Like it's just not. You'd have to cook the meatball.
MSG.
Who? Whoops. So much for no no. There's no moisture that's going to save it. You'd have to cook the meatballs in the sauce for like hours to get enough moisture into the center of the meatball. And even then, it's going to stay a little bit dry, just because those proteins are going to kind of shrink and shrivel up and stay tough. And it takes a really long time to kind of break that down once you have like ground beefs and stuff like that. Why meatballs and not meat cakes? Okay. Actually, I had somebody in my Patreon Discord made a meatball sub, but shaped the meatballs in like ovals and kind of like flattish ovals so that they were sandwich sized, which is like so genius. And honestly, there is no reason. It's just because it's traditionally how they were made. maybe, yeah, no reason. There's no reason. It's just a meatball, so you make a ball. But a meat patty, I feel like would be great for sandwiches. I feel like that'd be real nice. Where were the best meatballs you've had at a restaurant? So we don't eat a lot of Italian food at restaurants. We don't really go to Italian restaurants very often. But the best meatball that I've ever had at a restaurant was probably in Prato, Prato, in Orlando. They're a like a bistro style Italian restaurant. They do pizzas. If you're looking for like just a pizza, they have like the wood fire whatever pizzas that are looked fantastic. But I was not there for pizza. I was there for the other stuff on the menu. And they have the giant meatball as an appetizer kind of a thing. And it was very good. It was very good. And I actually based this meatball off of the flavor of that one. So Prato, Prato in Orlando. Okay, let's scroll. Are these meatballs good universally, or do you have a recommendation dish to use them with? I would strictly use these. I would strictly use these for Italian dishes. I don't think that I would go outside of an Italian dish with these, but I do have other, like I make other meatballs. So I make like a Vietnamese style, like banh mi style meatball at home. And then I'll do also like if I like a gyoza filling for like a Japanese style meatball, and I will make sauces and stuff to go on top of those. But they're all, I tend to flavor things separately according to how I'm going to eat them, instead of like making one thing and then well, I guess I can't say that. I will, if it's a meatball, right? And if it's got ground like meat in it and I'm adding other flavors, I'm going to add the flavor that I'm planning to use it on, that I'm planning to use it for. If it's something like a cut of meat, like a roast or something like that, or like chicken or whatever, then I tend to take that and break that down and use that in other meals. But it's because it's specifically like one cut of meat, and that flavor doesn't clash. But I feel like these specifically I would use in Italian food or American Italian food. Jackfruit. That would be a good, you have to grind them right though. Hey, but I mean, I feel jackfruit I feel like could work too. That imitates meat pretty well. Got some picky vegetarians you need to make food for. Yeah. Somehow just try to go to America and eat at this restaurant. Am I going to do the fresh herbs for the sauce? If not, can you explain the process? Yeah, I'll do those. I'll do those right now. You're going to leave them in the sauce for a couple more hours, most likely? Okay, I got you. We can do that now, since these are about to come out in a little bit. We'll do that. All right, let's get these herbs done. I do want to talk a little bit about cooking the meatballs in the sauce. While those are in there. So this recipe calls for just like 15 minutes or so in the sauce. Like I said earlier, just to kind of get that meat flavor and the fat that's on the outside of the meatball into the sauce to flavor the sauce with that, and not necessarily to cook the meatballs. Like you want to make sure your meatballs are cooked all the way through, but like once they're at temp, you're not gonna, like in this recipe specifically, you don't continue cooking the meatballs for hours and hours in the sauce. This is more like the sauce is made way ahead of time, so it is exactly where you want it to be. Then the meatballs go in, finish cooking, just give a hint more flavor, a little bit more depth, and then you're eating your meal. So in a lot of households, and honestly, the way that I grew up, we cooked the meatballs and the sauce for like all day, like all day, all day, all day. And that is great, but there is a trade-off, right? So there's a trade-off with anything. You can make these and you can cook them in the sauce for several hours after they're out of the oven, and it is still going to be delicious. But the thing is now instead of the meatballs being like really moist and light and all that kind of stuff, they're going to be slightly denser. They're still going to be delicious, but the thing that you are going to make better is the sauce. So you kind of either have the star of the show be the meatball or be the sauce. If you cook meatballs and sauce for hours and hours, that sauce is going to be so good. But you could eat that sauce with anything, and it is going to be utter perfection. But the meatballs are not going to be the star of the show. The sauce is. If you're making the meatballs and then you're finishing them in the sauce, the meatballs are the star of the show, and the sauce is kind of like a bonus. And so it just depends on like where you want it to kind of be. So think about that when you decide kind of like what you want to do or like what you're used to, because it is something that like if you're that person that like your family cooked the meatballs and the sauce for like an all day situation, then this is going to feel very different texturally and flavorally, whatever that is, in flavor than you are used to. And so if you really want to, you could even experiment and like do the 15 minutes, have some, and then let it go for a couple hours and try a few more. Fully up to you on how you want to do that, but just like FYI, keep that in mind. There is no wrong. They're just going to be different depending on what you want to do. All right, let's do this last bit here for the meatballs, or for the sauce, I mean. So we've got some fresh basil, some fresh oregano, and some lemon juice. Grab these. I took the lid off of this. Typically, I would cook this with the lid on the whole time. But I did take the lid off on this because I wanted to reduce it a little bit since we don't have as much time as I would usually have to cook the sauce. I'm going to try it one more time before I get to the herbs. Oh my God, that's good. Okay. I'm salivating. I'm salivating. Ah, so yummy. Lindsay, try your sauce. Have you been trying your sauce as you go? Are you tasting as you go, Lindsay? Okay. So we know this is I pulled these from my garden. They're a little janky. It's fine. So you know how I said that you can have the stems of cilantro and parsley? You're not going to eat the stems of the oregano. Oregano, thyme, rosemary, they have woody stems that are bitter. So we pick the leaves off of these guys. Lost in the sauce. Yay! Right, you're going to need 0.6 grams. I believe that's 1 tablespoon. What do we got here? Oh no, where did I get rid of that? Tomato sauce. Yeah, tablespoon of the fresh oregano. Oh, which is, 2 grams. 2 grams of fresh oregano, which is about 1 tablespoon. Just fresh oregano at your pizza place? That sounds good. It's good. Yay, Lindsay, I'm so happy. I'm so happy you like it. About halfway. It smells so good. Are you hungry? Are we gonna eat? You're eating. Eat some meatballs. Is this where the cool kids hang out? Yes. Yes, the cool kids hang out in YouTube. Nah, everybody's cool. Everybody's welcome. Almost done. I'm just picking the leaves off. I've got this, and then we're gonna do some basil and a little bit of lemon juice. And it's not a lot. And honestly, if you're tasting your sauce, and it's got a great acidity to it, if you want to skip the lemon juice, you can. The lemon juice is just to add just a hint, just a little hint of citrus and just a little bit of lightness to the sauce. But it's not necessary. I would consider it optional. How do I recommend storing these and how long will they stay good? So I recommend freezing the meatballs and then reheating them in sauce. I will cook whatever I want to eat right, like put meatballs that I want to eat right then into the sauce. And then I will take any of the extras that I don't plan to eat that day or in the next couple of days. I will put them on a tray that's lined with silicone mat or like a silicone baking sheet or parchment paper. Why is it saying this is still 1.5? Oh my God. Okay. I'll line a tray and then I'll place the meatballs. I'll take them from this tray and put them into onto the separate baking sheet, and then I'll freeze them. Once they're mostly frozen, you can take them off of the tray and move them into like a plastic baggie or something like that, and you can just keep them in your freezer for like up to 2 months, I would say. So as long as you eat them within like 2 months or so, you're good to go. And then the sauce is the same thing. The sauce, because you're cooking the meatballs in it, lasts as long as meat will last in the refrigerator. So 2 to 3 days. If you're planning on eating all of these, you know, the 20 plus meatballs, if you're planning on eating them in 2 to 3 days, then you don't need to put them in the freezer. But if you are planning on eating, or if you aren't planning on eating them, then I would suggest that you freeze both the meat and the meatballs. I would store them separately. I don't think that I would store the meatballs in the sauce because then you have to bring everything up to temperature and you risk kind of overcooking the meatballs a little bit. I prefer to bring the sauce up to like a gentle simmer and then put the meatballs in just to reheat them through because you have already cooked them for the most part. But yeah. So if that's helpful. But they will stay good. Okay, this is, wow, I picked the exact amount that I needed. Go figure. Love that. Cooking a smaller batch of meatballs. A cupcake pan cooks them nice. Okay. Yeah, I can see how that would work. And then you're kind of like keeping them contained and they're getting heat further up on all sides instead of just kind of from the bottom in the air. Like the metal will kind of superheat them a little bit. You might get a better char on them that way as well. It could work. I trust Alton. I trust Alton with my life. That man does no wrong. Okay. So we picked through our oregano. And I kind of just do that. And then I've got a big, lot of basil. Okay. We got some fresh basil. We're looking for 4.5 grams. About 2 tablespoons of chopped basil. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to chiffonade these very similarly to the parsley, which is basically rolling them and like ribboning them and then dicing from there, or chopping from there. Not dicing, chopping from there. Okay, so we've got them stacked. We're going to roll them long ways. You make kind of like a cigar shape, and then you're just going to ribbon. And that's going to go in. And that's it. I'm going to have I like it to be a little bit more rustic. If you want, and I've totally seen this also, is just like toss the full basil leaves in and then just have like whole basil leaves just kind of like going into the dishes. It can be really nice, especially if you really like basil. And then I'm just going to give the oregano a little bit of a rough chop. And that is done as well. Okay. And then lemon. And I'm just going to give this a little bit of a squeeze. Oh, I guess I should have done this. Let me tell you this. So if you're ever trying to like squeeze lemon and you're like, I hate squeezing lemon, if you're not using like a reamer or like something that will collect juice. So something like this guy, right? So if you're not, essentially using a juice squeezer, reamer, something or other, and you don't want to combat the seeds, if honestly you can do this in a better way than I did. If you cut off just the top, because you want to make a flat surface at all times, right? Whenever you're cutting something, chopping, julienning, whatever kind of nice skill you're using, you want to make sure that you're cutting flat surfaces and you're not like trying to cut on something that's going to roll away from you, because that's dangerous. So you essentially would cut a flat section and then you can put your lemon down flat. So once it's down flat, all of the seeds are right in the center here. So if you just cut down the side, and now I just have lemon to squeeze and I'm not dealing with the seeds. And you can cut like down, like you would have like a whole kind of like what is it called? Like a panel. I don't even know. But you would have like one kind of piece here of lemon juice that then you can squeeze out, and you don't have to deal with the seeds at all. But I only need like a teaspoon, so we're just gonna go with this little guy. These are gonna go in. Give my knife. Okay. So now that's gonna go in the sauce. And we're going to mix and taste. At this point, you can also take the bay leaf out. If you're planning on cooking it for several hours, at this point, you should have already had this cooking for 3 hours or so. So if you want to take the bay leaf out once you're adding in the fresh ingredients, you can. Lindsay, if you're planning, for anybody who is cooking with me live today and you are planning to let this sauce go for longer, just add this around the time that you take the meatballs out and toss them in, and you'll be good to go. And you can take the basil out when you add in your fresh ingredients. Let's see where we are. Cool. Okay. It's time to get these meatballs out. I smell them. I'm pretty sure they're done. Let's do this. feel like I need to, oh, I need to clean. No, just my station, like the surface that I'm working on. Okay. Whew. Meatballs are out. So you can see there's like a lot of fat in this pan. That is okay. That is fine. I need tongs. If you want, you can let these cool a little bit so that you can, this is all depending on like how comfortable you are with grease and fat and all that. I know for us in particular, I have someone in the house who gets tummy aches if there's too much grease or fat in food. So I have to kind of be careful with that. Right now it's nice because it's super liquid, but if it sits for a little longer, especially if you're planning on like transferring them into the freezer, what I like to do is kind of run my finger around the bottom to take off anything. Like essentially it's kind of like a skirt, kind of like if you're doing gyoza and you make like a little, like the skirt, that like crispy skirt at the bottom of them. It's kind of like that. Like you've got just fat sitting around the outside and I'll just kind of like take that off. And then add that to the sauce. I guess we can do this right now. They should be to temp because they cook for a pretty long time. So let's see where we are internally. Now remember, we're still cooking them in the sauce. So like even if they aren't 100%, yeah, I'm at like 180. So like these are fully ready for me to just eat as is. And I can show you, let me show you what it looks like on the inside. I'll rinse this stuff real quick and give you a little bit of a view. My cutting board's kind of been through the ringer today. So sorry for the the view, but we'll make it work. Okay, so let's move this. We'll get the cutting board in frame. And we'll cut one of these guys open. I don't like cutting, especially like meatloaves and things that can lose moisture really easy. I don't like cutting them right out of the oven. But just so that you guys can see, if you plan to kind of cut these in half and eat them, and like serve them to people as like that or whatever, I would suggest letting them rest for a little bit. But because we're kind of going through this, so here's our meatball. I don't know if you can see the moisture that's in that. But you can tell like you still have lots of air pockets. But it's the steam's coming out of them. You have lots of air pockets. It's not dense. Yeah. It's hot, but it's good. Oh my God. Okay. Let me get these in the sauce. Yeah, you coming for some meatballs? I'm gonna get these in the sauce, and I'm gonna cook just the ones that we're gonna eat like today because we'll probably eat this for dinner. Or actually, we'll eat this for lunch. How many do you want? We're having a late lunch. Just two. Okay, well, there's 6 meatballs in there.
Okay, 4.
3 each. Okay. So let these cool a little bit, and then I'll move them onto their own tray. I'll freeze them, and then we'll use however much sauce and eat the meatballs that are in there. Use however much sauce there is, and then I will portion out the sauce for meals to go with these guys, and then combine them however I feel like. Whether that be a meatball sub or spaghetti and meatballs or something like that. Oh man. Okay. That's it. This is done. This is done in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. I'm just gonna let them cook just slightly, just pick up some of the flavor of the sauce. and then we're gonna eat them. And that will be the end of that. So I guess, does anybody have any final questions before we end the live? Before I do my little outro for this video. Can I have some? It's a great question. No, I'm sorry. You can if you make them, if you go to the website and you make your own meatballs, you can definitely have them. But I unfortunately cannot ship perishable goods like this. Believe me, you don't want it by the time it gets to you. Okay. I don't think there's anything else to add. I guess actually, now that I say that, there is one thing that I just remembered. If you do not want to add sugar to your sauce, I have a tablespoon of packed brown sugar that is in there. I do have somewhere what the grams in that is, so let me go ahead and find that. It's 12.5 grams of packed brown sugar or brown sugar. If you don't want to do that, you can grate a carrot. If you finely grate a carrot, you can put it in and let that cook in the sauce, and that will also give it some sugar and add some of that flavor in. It is a more traditional way to add sweetness to sauce is to use the carrot and not to use the sugar. Sugar is just easier. You're going to use about a half of a carrot if you decide that you want to add sweetness to the sauce using a carrot or using a root vegetable instead of some sugar. So up to you. That is a note. Just tasted a meatball. Oh my God. Yay. I'm so glad you like it. If you decide, I don't know where I was going with that. Yeah, that's it. We're done. Do however you want to do it. We're good. We're done. Casual. Can you put maple syrup on them? Probably. The thing is we added so many savory elements, right? So when we added an anchovy and we added Parmesan and we added in the Marmite and we added in the tomato paste, and like you're adding so many savory elements that if you then go and decide that you're going to like put a different kind of sauce on it, I almost feel like they might clash a little bit. Like I feel like if you made this meatball with less savory elements, that it would be better at taking on a very sweet sauce. Not sure how helpful that is, but I don't know if I would fully recommend like a maple syrup with something like this. Like it's not like if you were gonna do a maple syrup, I would want to have like sage, and it'd be like honestly sage and salt. Like go easy on yourself. So maybe some ground black pepper, and then you can like put a little bit of maple syrup in there, so you get kind of a breakfast sausage situation. But like this is an entirely different animal. The most food I've eaten in one sitting. I ate an entire large cheese pizza from Papa John's when I was in middle school. I think that's probably the most I've eaten in a sitting. It's an interesting question. Probably something I should answer not during this stream. You did just hear Marmite. Yes. Marmite is an ingredient in the tomato sauce. With meatballs, what shape of pasta would you pair with it? Would you go for something like rice instead of pasta? With these meatballs, I usually use capellini. It is an in-between of thin spaghetti and spaghetti. It's kind of like a mid-size. And You could probably do, I probably would do spaghetti and thinner. But I would stick to like long noodles. I probably wouldn't do like any other style of noodle just because you already have the textural difference with the meatballs and the sauce is not a particularly thick sauce. If you had like a cream sauce, something that you added cream or sour cream or cream cheese or whatever dairy to your sauce, then I would probably suggest that you do something like a bucatini or a penne or something that allows to have sauce coat both the inside and the outside of the noodle. If this were a meat sauce, so like say it wasn't separate meatballs, the meat was actually crumbled into the sauce, cooked into the sauce in the way that like a bolognese is, then I would tell you to do a wide flat noodle like tagliatelle, or is it tagliatelle? Are those the bow ties? I don't know. That's farfalle. The pappardelle pasta, the really thick ones, or like sheet pasta, like that's always really nice with the meat, just because the texture of the sauce is so much thicker and has so much more going on that it doesn't overwhelm the sauce. But because this sauce is strictly just like a tomato sauce, I would stick with a thin kind of spaghetti and thinner noodle, long noodle. Do I recommend vermicelli rice noodles? Not for this recipe. I do like to use vermicelli rice noodles with Asian recipes. So if you were gonna do like a Korean japchae or something like that, those can be really nice in those meals. And the great thing about the vermicelli is also that they have a really low glycemic index. So they're great for anybody who is like pre-diabetic or like type 2. They can be really helpful for that kind of a thing. But those are really good with like stir fries and like Asian like tangier, stronger sauces that are like thick and meant to just like do a thin coat of something, that it's not like swimming in a sauce. It's more like coated in a sauce. Those noodles are great for something like that. Giant pasta shells mean that you can have a 1-to-1 ratio of meatball and pasta. That's not a 1-to-1 ratio though. If it's an entire meatball and then just like a thin layer, it's like it is. And then you did say it. Use pasta to pick up meatballs like a burrito. It would be like a burrito. Actually, that sounds great. That sounds really good. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead. Try to be good with carbs, having edamame fettuccine. It's actually really good. That does sound good. This would actually, if you did the zoodles, right, the zucchini noodles, I bet you zucchini noodles would be great with this. If you're looking for like a low carb alternative, zucchini noodles or spaghetti squash would be a great alternative to a pasta for this dish. Okay. I'm going to do an outro. Thank you very much to anyone who is watching this not during the live. After we end, for those of you who are here during the live, I'm still going to be hanging out for another couple of minutes, just chatting casually, any topic. We're just going to chill for a little bit. But thank you very much for anybody who cooked with me today. I really enjoy making all these recipes with you guys, and I really appreciate all of you viewers out there who are coming and kind of doing the cook along with me, learning, growing, taking any of the culinary skills and the information that I'm just espousing here and taking it on into your lives outside of this. I hope that you're getting great food and great knowledge from all of this, because that is what I'm aiming to do. I do have, again, we'll mention the website one more time, alittlespoon.com. The link to the recipe is in the comments for this video. So if you click there, it'll take you to the website, and then you can scroll around to your heart's content. It's not just meals like this. There's also desserts and cocktails and all sorts of really fun things. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out either from the website. You can also DM me on Instagram. I'm at a_little_spoon. And I do have, just because it pays the bills, I do have a Patreon. If you like to join, that would be great. You do not have to get as involved as a lot of the people who are Patreon members do. If you want to just support the work and support the content and do a monthly subscription, that is fine. But we do also have a private Discord server where we chat like all day, every day about the things that we're cooking, the places that we're going, and restaurants and things like that. It's a lot of fun. We've got some really just wonderful people in there. And then we also do a monthly Zoom call where we hang and just chat for like an hour or so, It's usually plus. We get really into our conversations. And then I'm like, guys, we've been here for too long. But it's just an all in all, just like a great community. And it's really nice. They're very helpful. It's very helpful to kind of like give behind the scenes information and like get kind of like do like member poll situation for like, what should I do this month? Or how are you guys feel about this? And get a little bit of that input. So it's nice. They kind of require tiers with Patreon. But I have done like $1 a month tier. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. I think I've set up like $1, $5, and like 10 and 20 or something like that, just because they require tiers. But it can be as simple as $1 a month, and then you get access to all that stuff, which is great. But we just have some fun. So this was meatballs and tomato sauce. And I will see you next month. I'm not going to should I say the recipe that we're going to be doing next month at the end of this video? That feels a little odd if people are finding this months and months later. Whatever. The next recipe that we're going to be doing for November is a dark chocolate ganache swirled marshmallow that are made homemade from scratch. I will be posting about those in my socials so that you guys can get ready. But if you want to go check out the recipe now, you can. Again, alittlespoon.com. Thank you very much for joining me today in the Little Spoon Kitchen, and we will be back next time with some more good food. Bye.